Hey guys, how you doing? Welcome to another interview. I've got a great conversation tonight planned with my very dear friend, Sarah Jakes Roberts. And y'all were so amazing on May the 28th. I had my interview with Dr. Anita Phillips, and so many of you, I mean, that has been shared around the place. So many of you lent in. We learned and gleaned so much wisdom from Dr. Anita. It was just absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I know how much you all loved her, and this is why I know how much you're going to love tonight, because it was actually Sarah that introduced me to Dr. Anita, and now all of you. I mean, there are so many of you that have been following her and her wisdom, and I think that was absolutely awesome. A whole bunch of you are saying that it was amazing, because it really was. And so we've been on this listening and learning journey over the last few weeks, and I want to just say thank you before we jump into the interview. I just want to thank you so much, because your posture has been one of leaning in, a posture of humility, a posture of saying, I want to listen, I want to learn. You'll know I'm no expert on anything. I'm listening and learning along with you, and then taking action. And it's been absolutely amazing seeing so many of you take action in so many different ways, using your voice, putting your feet on the pavement, and walking and marching and peacefully protesting, and really and voting, and calling government officials and looking for policy changes. And I love all of that. Been watching so many conversations that you've all been having and really leaning in. And of course, we're just at the beginning of all of this, but we're on it together, and I'm just so grateful for that. Of course, we know that Jesus Christ is the key. He is our firm foundation, and he is the key. So I'm going to invite Sarah. I'm sure she probably is, but you all know how great I constantly am with my being challenged. So there, it's out there, and I think we're going to work it all out. What I'm going to do is, once Sarah jumps on, I'm going to turn the comments off. The reason I'm doing that is because I want you to hear her wisdom. As you all know, I have so many IG lives, and I do Q&As. I invite so many of you onto the call, which is absolutely fantastic. But because in the same way, I've only turned the comments off one other time, and that was with Dr. Anita, and you all thanked me for that, because it also makes it much easier to share, and they are so full of wisdom. And I think you are going to find that with my friend Sarah tonight. I'm just waiting for Sarah saying I'm here. Okay, and I have hit my normal thing where I've sent an invitation and she said here. So Sarah, send me another invitation. This is the moment where I get more humbled than anything on these IG lives, because you all realize how technologically challenged I am. I even wore a bright shirt because Sarah she's going, I requested, but it's not coming up on mine yet, Sarah. So sometimes this happens. We are going to break through. So she's reassuring me, because we have almost a 20-year age difference, actually more than that. So she's reassuring me that the problem is with me and not with her. Okay, let's see. She'll be on here right now. Okay. And she's about to come on. Sarah, I've worked it. I'm waiting for you to come on, and you're all going to laugh. And then, girls, I'm going to turn the comments off. It says connecting. I'm going to just turn the comments off. Turn off comments. And there is my friend. I did it.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. Look, I even wore a bright shirt. This is one of the few times I didn't text you to say, what should I wear?
Is this fashion? Do it. Do the fashion thing.
That's it. My daughter said, you've got to wear something a little bit brighter. So I did. And, I'm so grateful you joined me tonight. I really am.
Thank you for hosting this. It means a lot to me.
It's so powerful. Now you are, your longtime friend, our new friend, Dr. Anita, has won the hearts of so many people, men and women, from this community. So I want to say thank you for introducing us. And she's gold, hey?
Absolutely. And I think that what she's doing in this time is really important, not just for building a bridge, but I think giving our community words to express what we've been feeling. Because I feel like even in being in some of our seminars and being able to work with her myself, that I feel like I have more of a perspective on what it means to be Black in a way that I can communicate that helps me to understand my feelings in any given moment.
Which is amazing. Absolutely. Okay, so we're going to dive right in. We've got a lot of people that are excited to hear. Let me just preface this because I want everyone to know, you know, I've said it to you. I've said it publicly to you. You've been with us on a Propel stage. We've had dinner together. I came to celebrate your birthday. I mean, we've had moments. So this is, and that's why I wanted to have this opportunity to go, okay, where there is a real genuine friendship, a mutual respect. I think, you know, Dr. Anita has helped us so much in terms of a trauma-informed response to so much of what is going on. There have been so many conversations happening about what we can do and help to do to change systems and structures. But where the rubber is going to hit the road for all of us is going to be interpersonal relationships, and where that goes. That's why I was really grateful for this. And we're friendships, but I do want to say up front, like, because everyone knows, not only are you my daughter's hero preacher, you're like my hero preacher. Like when I grow up, I say this everywhere, I want to be Sarah Jakes Roberts. And, you know, I say if I had to die tomorrow and if there was an ounce of anything, wisdom, anointing, just because I could be your mother, that's how much older than you that I am. You give me so much hope for the next generation. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for pouring out your life and your gift for a generation. And thank you for my own daughters, but not just my daughters. This 53-year-old white woman is very, very grateful for you. I want to say that up front. But let's dive in, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your own story so our people can get to know you.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess preaching is in my blood. My parents are from West Virginia. My father moved our church to Dallas in 96. He's Bishop Jakes. And I grew up in that household. And I really never thought that I would be in ministry, but I really kind of had my own journey. And that's probably a whole Instagram live within itself. But I really came to this place where I accepted that in spite of some of the things that I had gone through, you know, teen pregnancy, divorce, that there was still a place in the kingdom for girls who maybe had broken paths. And I think what I learned when I began speaking out at different places is that we all have broken paths in our own way, and then we're all challenged to really rise again and grow. But I think as it really relates to us and this conversation and opportunity to connect, that one of the things that I learned even from West Virginia, but I was a little bit younger, 8 when we moved to Dallas, as it relates to race and seeing my father begin to grow and to really reach different circles, is just how different we were in a lot of different ways. And maybe we can get into that a little bit. I think Dallas is a lot more progressive than maybe some southern states, or southern cities rather, but there is something about even the nuances that we face there that I don't want to just like start rambling, but if you want me to
No,
keep
but
going.
that's not a ramble, because that's exactly, see, there would be a whole lot of people and white people here that would go, what do you mean that you experienced any sort of form of racism in that context? That they and I would want to know, what does that mean? What are examples of that?
Okay, so when my parents first moved to Dallas, our house didn't have any furniture in it, and they were still coming to kind of like do repairs and appraisals. And I can remember vividly being in the kitchen as a little girl, and an estimator was there to do something. And my mom and her sisters and some of the people who were helping us transition were in the kitchen. He came into the kitchen and he said, "If you guys don't stop laughing, I'm going to tell Mr. Jakes that you're in here messing around," not realizing that just because we were Black didn't mean that we didn't live in the house. They thought that my mom was like a housekeeper or house staff. And so I think my mom ended up saying something kind of clever back, while I'm sleeping with Mr. Jake, so good luck with that kind of thing. But I think it just became very evident that there was a perspective on what we were supposed to look like and how our lifestyle was supposed to look in the places where we should or should not be going, walking into different stores and just feeling like, you can't really afford that. Let me shift you over to something a little bit more within your budget, or people like you don't really go for things like that. And those are the little small nuances that follow, I think, probably most Black people in different stages and phases in their life, that just let them know that there is a perspective on what it means for you to be Black in this city, in this store, in this school. I think the place changes, but those, I guess, microaggressions show up in different ways.
I love the way that you're even saying that, because it is, if I didn't know you personally and hadn't had conversations and with some other women, I would not even think that was a real thing, not in 2020. That you would be confronted with that in a store. It is just shocking. I'm thinking, and I know that so much has happened. Of course, just in the last few weeks, we know Ahmaud and, of course, George Floyd. And here you are, a Black woman married to a Black man, and you have a Black son. And so I have to say, it went beyond breaking my heart. I remember when I sent you that text, and when I want to do whatever I can do, because this is, as an Australian woman that's moved to America, this is just unbelievable to me that this actually keeps happening and that it's real. And then just listening to you talk about that, how that impacted you as a mother, how it does every time it happens. Can you talk to us a bit about that?
So there's something you said that I think is really important, and that is like that we're friends. It's almost unfathomable to believe that those types of things happen. And I think that that's why this conversation is really important, because there are interracial friendships, and our friendships bring us together because of our commonalities. It's very rare that we have an opportunity or even to acknowledge the differences that we have. And I think that a lot of times Black women conform to the culture that they are in because we've had to conform. We have centuries worth of having to conform to whatever the majority was in that moment. So it didn't leave a lot of space for us to share our experiences. And one of the things that I really admire about this instance that took place recently in the last couple of weeks, you and I were a little bit more connected because we were having those weekly prayer calls, is that you reached out to me and you made space for me to open up and to share what I was feeling in that moment. And I think part of this being seen from a trauma perspective really does mean that if you are a white ally or a friend of someone who is a person of color and you see something that's happening to the community, to not necessarily be so quick to think because they didn't know them or because it didn't happen in our city that they aren't affected by it, but to allow them a space to really express what that is doing to them, because this is a recurring trauma that we experience. And we had this incredible call with faith leaders, and we got on there and we really, Dr. Anita really talked about the cultural worldviews and why there's a separation there. And while we were on that call, it was the first time that I'd ever really had any idea that being Black could be considered a trauma. And I was still processing that when I think a question came up, and I had to share how my daughter, who is 4, asked me a question about police officers. And she's like, "Mommy, police are here to protect us." Now she's 4. She doesn't really know everything that's happening in the world. And every part of me as a mother wanted to share with her, yes, honey, they really are. And I want to believe that the majority of police officers are, but I knew that I also had a responsibility in raising her with these Black brothers and Black fathers and Black uncles walking around the house to kind of, in a way, tell a 4-year-old that it's a complicated relationship, that there are some prejudices. And like, you want to sell, like the thing that makes this so traumatic for us is that ever since, our ancestors got here, there's been this American dream and American nightmare living in juxtaposition. And this American dream says white picket fence, it says good schools, it says go to college, and we want that dream. But we didn't come over here in pursuit of an American dream. We didn't come over here with this idea of we could work our way up from the ladder. We came over here as a people group in chains who had to view from the outside looking in an American dream that we were denied access to over and over and over again. And now that some of us are maybe starting to build a little bit into this way that allows us some access to better schools, some access to better information and better financial positions, we still want to sell our children this American dream, but we realize the perspective on us as a majority is still going to show up no matter how well we do, no matter how far we excel. I have to tell my daughter not just the American dream, but also the American nightmare. And what I am kind of more hopeful for today than I've ever been when we've had these series, and listen, I'm just in my 30s, so I can only imagine for my father's generation and for, you know, my grandparents' generation, if they were still here, what this looks like for them. But to have space to be able to tell our white friends now, like, I know it was an American dream for you. I know that this country has been so incredibly good to you. And to be honest, it's all I've ever known. I don't want to go anywhere either. But I would like for us to maybe collectively acknowledge that it is possible that you can have an American dream and I have an American nightmare, and they both be true. And until we're able to really intertwine those, I don't think that we're really going to have an honest view of America. And I think when we have an honest view of America, it's not for us to be torn down. It's not for us to feel like we can't be proud of this country anymore. But I want to be proud of this country because this country addresses the areas where we have disparities, because it addresses the blood that's literally in the soil, and that it makes amends and rooms and environments for us to be able to say, I'm not going to nail you to having this one particular version of an American dream, but I realize the American dream is going to have to be modified to meet different people and cultural groups.
I think that's powerful. And, you know, a lot of white people would hear that and almost feel paralyzed. Like, it's like, what do I do with that? You know, it's like and I think in a lot of the conversations that are happening now, there's a big sense of guilt and again, a guilt that leads to paralysis almost, because it's like, what am I supposed to do? You know, I wasn't here then, and I didn't do that then. And here we are today. And yet I think that unless there is an acknowledgement and space, I was thinking about this because I thought how many conferences, you know, you come into, and we all love your gift and celebrate you and come in. And I wondered, I've been wondering in the last few weeks, what is it like for you as a Black woman, even at excelling in an area and having access to rooms? What is it like walking? How do you feel? We didn't plan this question. Walking into a room full of white women. What is that like?
You know, it is normal for us because we're used to walking into places where we're the minorities in this company. So it is not odd for us to walk into a space and be the only person of color. I think especially as we begin to move outside of our communities. I mean, the pursuit of higher education for most of us, the pursuit of corporate America for most of us means that we are subjecting ourselves to rooms in which we are the only people of color. And it becomes so normal to us that I don't think we even assess the emotional division that takes place in order for us to show up in those spaces. But we do have to kind of divide ourselves emotionally to recognize that there's a certain way that I'm supposed to speak in this room. There's a certain way that I'm supposed to conduct myself in those rooms. And if the fullness of who I am, this is the greatest fear. If the fullness of who I am showed up in this room, I don't know that I would be invited back. You know what I mean? Because everything has to fit into this cookie cutter picture. And so I challenged myself when I first started speaking. And I mean, I was doing like women in faith in places like Billings, Montana, where I was not just the only Black girl in the room. I think I was the only Black girl in this city. Okay. Is to really be serious about like being who I am. You know what I mean? To not show up and to leave my Blackness at the door. You know what I mean? There's a certain way that we speak. There's a certain way that we laugh. There's a certain joy and sense of humor that we have that may be odd and abrasive, but I felt like if I am the only Black girl that they get to meet, I have to represent the fullness of what it means to be a Black girl for me. You know what I mean? I know I can't represent everyone, but I don't want to do this whitewashed version of myself so that everyone feels comfortable. And when I tell you, they would come up to me and they're like, I loved you in War Room. It was so good. I'm like, I'm not Priscilla. She's an incredible actress, but you know, thumbs up. And then there were some of them, this is what I do think, they would come up to me and they say, thank you for keeping it real. I will tell you, I speak at a lot of white churches, and I am authentic whether I'm speaking at our events, our churches, or at Propel. I am myself because it is important to me that I don't lose myself in the pursuit of a platform. I want to be who I am intentionally. But one thing that I do realize is that for some reason, I hear from white women when I go into those spaces, thank you for keeping it real. Thank you for being authentic. Thank you for being honest about what we have gone through that dared to shape us and threaten us. And so I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
Is it easier or more challenging, I guess, as white people to talk about like scars and pain and shame in general, not just as it relates to the country and nation, but like, you know, to talk about my teen pregnancy, to talk about the divorce, to talk about how God restored me, to talk about my low self-esteem? It feels like those are questions that we don't really address within those church environments. And so when I do come in, I feel like I'm the person who comes in and gives people permission to be like, sis, it's hard out here. We're struggling, but that's all right. God is going to meet us in the midst of the struggle, and we're going to be able to grow and evolve from this.
Yeah, and that's a great question. I'm possibly not the best person to answer it, but I do have an objective view coming and moving here from Australia,
Sure.
and coming from my Pentecostal world into a more evangelical world. So I remember when I first came and spoke at Women of Faith and some other circles, and people were shocked that I was open. So I say this, I go, the black church shaped me and my preaching, but that's because I was the kid left at a hospital, unnamed and unwanted. I was sexually abused. I grew up in the poorest zip code in my state. So some aspects of their story was my story. Like, so I found healing there. I found your dad's preaching. I found healing. I found wholeness. So I didn't know any other way than like I was lost and I got saved, and this is the mess. And if Jesus could do it for me, he could do it for you. So that was me. Now I'm white, but Greek Australian. So, and I was a lot for that world. I didn't realize, but I was a lot even as a white woman, purely because I was, because I mean, even then 10 years ago, to say sexual abuse was a big deal, like to even say the phrase, let alone I was broken. So I would imagine many women, in my experience now, that have grown up in those circles, you didn't talk about that. You didn't talk about broken. You had a nice veneer, and you didn't talk about your brokenness, the things you were struggling with. And so then you come in and you're not trying to hide anything. You're like, here is your story. And your story connects in aspects with every person in the room. And that's why I think everyone is so open, and you disarm people because you're not trying to hide. But this is, again, my external. If you've grown up in a culture and in certain parts of the church, as I've discovered, certain denominations were formed because they wanted to keep slaves. So you're going to have to get really good at being able to read the Bible and disconnect yourself from reality and listen to a sermon on Sunday and go home to your slaves. Like, I mean, are you kidding me? So that to me is woven into the fabric of having a facade, pretending everything's okay, and almost like a cognitive dissonance between here it is and there it is. And I think this is just my observation, my spaces have always been inviting everyone in. My ministry has been around the world. That's A21 is in 20 countries around the world. It's just who we are. But realizing here is, I thought there would be certain times we would go to dinners after events, and it was then that it hit me that, oh my gosh, Sarah or Jackie are the only black women in this whole city or this whole restaurant. And I realized then that this is unusual. But I would watch really rigid women that just weren't used to expressing emotion just like start to unravel and open their hearts as you would start to preach, and you being you. And I thought, you're connecting with pain that they have not even acknowledged in many, many ways. And so I think then what's going on right now, there are so many people that want to lean in, but they haven't been in the habit of acknowledging their own pain, and there's so much shame. And now we've got this
another level.
Yes, basically. So I would say that I think it depends which part of the church you're from. Some parts of the charismatic church, there's a lot of emotion. So they're used to that. But then I think in my experience, some parts of the evangelical church that I've been involved in now for the last few years have certainly talking about things and about abuse and about suffering and about pain or divorce or loss or teen pregnancy. I mean, just do the list of some things that you would just mention in a sermon is like the first time they would have heard anybody say anything like that. So, and you know, and then we've got this thing going on right now, and it's like, it's not even that a lot of women don't want to open their hearts. They're just not even used to and what do you do with that pain that you suddenly realize, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think for me, I've kind of likened it to a more intimate relationship. And I think that that's why it's important that we have this conversation on a friendship level, because I don't know if anyone's married, been in a relationship, whatever. There's this moment where you're maybe having a disagreement and you are so married to your points and your sides and you are ready to defend them at any cost. But it is not until the moment we step away from our defense and try and see it from the other person's perspective that we're really able to bring some sense of empathy. And I think from empathy, there begets change. And I think that what I have seen more than I've ever seen is the willingness to be open to what this may feel like. What if for so long we have been married to there's only one narrative for what it means to be an American, that we've missed out on the opportunity to really connect with people who have had a different experience. And I think as it relates to that friendship level, there are some opportunities that we can create to have safe spaces and to acknowledge another person's pain. And it's really powerful when your pain is acknowledged. You know, a lot of times people are like, you know, just take it to God. God can take care of it. But if you're talking to someone who has the power to give you some level of healing, they have the power to give you some level of breakthrough, but they withhold it from you. Of course, I can go to God, but it does leave a little bit of a divide in the relationship. And you reaching out to me in the midst of all of the unrest said to me that I can bring the fullness of who I am in this moment. And we're not asking you to have the answers. We're not asking you to just overthrow the entire government with one phone call and one text message, okay? We understand that this is centuries worth of pain and trauma, and it's going to take a marathon in order for us to heal it and fix it the way that it needs to take place. But I'm asking you to see me, to not be colorblind, to not feel like I'm just okay, to feel like I'm disconnected from it in some capacity, but to make some space to see me. Like I have to
Have I lost you?
is going off and to walk into different rooms, and I don't always feel seen as a Black person in that space. And until you grab my hand as a friend, I'm not asking you know, us to go up to random Black people, because you do need to have a relationship to do this. You know what I mean? It would be, you can give us the whole I'm with you, you know, like I'm with you, I got your back. But when you have a relationship with someone, to make space for them to say, you know, I don't know what you're going through right now, but if there's anything that you want to vent to me, if there's anything that I can do or say or be there to support you in this moment, just let me know. It gives me permission to bring all of myself into a friendship and to not just bring the parts that make you comfortable. There's this term, white fragility, that has been floating. And, you know, I think that there are people who are much more educated to really define that. But I think the fear of maybe facing that emotional pain or facing any level of shame or having an uncomfortable conversation can create what we think, we talked about this, is an elephant in the room. But until we know that it's an elephant for you and not a gnat, then we may be convinced to think that our Blackness is an inconvenience to you. And it's better if we leave it out of the friendship so that we can continue to connect on a surface level without us really talking about the deeper pain that we experience in friendships.
And I think it's powerful when you talk about seeing, and I mean, because we're having this conversation, people can see even just how, if for me, this has been a reality. Like when we had the prayer meeting after Ahmad's murder, like we had a bunch of women that have been meeting and praying on Zoom since the beginning of COVID. And it was that day, Dr. Anita was going to pray. Like we just have 7 or 8 women that pray every time. And, you know, we all came to that prayer meeting heavy hearted. And there is a good amount of black women on that prayer meeting, but it's predominantly white women. And this is what I realized. Like, it was like, okay, everyone, and we start our normal, anyone got any prayer requests? Because it's almost like, I don't even know how to start. We all know that this murder has happened. We all know that we've got pastors and leaders on this call that are black. I don't know what to say, or should I say something, because we're friends, but we haven't had that level of conversation about color, because we're all united around, we're senior pastors and we're ministers, and that's how we've been relating. And then I remember when Dr. Anita just started crying, and just that she goes, I've got a prayer request. And I just remember feeling I should have let out with that, with as soon as we open, going, to Dr. Anita, to you, to Zai, to all the other black women that were on that call. But that moment of like, I don't know, because you talk about being seen as a black woman, because my relationship with you, we've gone to dinner, I've come to your house, we've preached, your dad's been in and out of our world. So to go then from that, like, yeah, okay, that's Sarah or Priscilla, or that's Anita, to hang on a minute. These are my black sisters that right now there is this huge moment. So I don't even know if I'm making sense to you, but to dare to embrace the discomfort. Like, I remember when Anita started crying, and it just in me was like, Christine, I don't even know what to do, but it just shifted me from, these are my ministers. So it's almost like an unintentional color blindness. We're all just ministers on this call, rather than taking a few more seconds to step back and go, hang on a minute. What is happening in this nation is impacting 10 of these 50 women in a really, really big way. And we need to stop and acknowledge that. And I think that's when I sent you the text. And that would be the first time. I mean, Priscilla and I have been friends for, 15 years or something. And you and Jackie and I sent that text and went, I know this sounds really awkward. I feel really weird, but I need you all to know I want to help. I want to help me to understand what's going on. And I would say, I'm just letting all the white women know, it was, you've all been in and out of my life, but I felt odd suddenly going from, we're all preacher friends or ministry friends or holiday friends, to I now actually have to stop and say, there is something going on in this country, and how it's impacting you is very differently to how it's impacting me. And now we can't just come around our shared, we do this together, whether we work together, we play together. I have to just go, okay, help me. But I'm just saying, it was awkward. And especially if you're a leader and you host things and you do it, and it's going, okay, you all got to help me now and teach me. And it's not easy, is what I'm trying to say.
And let me tell you how powerful it is to speak up and to even say, I don't know what to say, because it affects the Black community, but it ultimately affects this country,
Mm-hmm.
And I think for us to take it out of just something that affects the Black people into something that, like, this is going to affect our country. That's why we start protesting. That's why we're out in the streets, because it comes from being our little problem to being a problem that stops traffic. Hey guys, we have a problem here and we need a little help. And I think that saying something helps us to know that we matter to you. Even if you don't have the solutions, even if you don't have the answers, to see this as an issue that is reoccurring and not just a one-off, and not the way this has happened. There's no way that we come over here as slaves and that the civil right, you free us as slaves, you give us no land, you give us nothing to help build ourselves, we try to rebuild, it's burned down. There's no way that this has ever been exactly fair. So when we start saying, like, hey guys, it hurts again, for you to say, like, hey, I see you're hurting, and because you're hurting, I'm hurting too, like, that matters to us, because your silence, we don't know where you are when you're silent. every single day we are reminded of the fact that we don't live as the majority in this country, and that we have to swallow that little part of the store that's got our hair stuff in it, that little part of the city that is where we can find things that we like to eat. Like, we are segregated in many ways. And until someone crosses that line and says, hey, we're not going to be segregated in this pain, then it does feel like something we have to keep to ourselves. And I think that the need to have answers is what keeps a lot of people from speaking out. But I'm not asking you to have answers. I was telling one of my new friends who I met from the call is, we have the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter argument. There are all types of analogies. And one of the ones that I have enjoyed the most is, like, if you're in a community and there's a house on fire and people are out and they're saying, like, hey, the house is on fire, the house is on fire, for someone to come out and say all houses matter would be a little inappropriate, because at that moment, this house is on fire. But there's one thing for the house to be on fire and you're the only one battling the fire. There's another thing for your neighbors to come out and say, I only have a cup of water, I only have a towel to help wipe your head while you fight this towel, but I'm not going to let you do it by yourself. Like, that is the most powerful gift that you can give any of us in this moment, is the idea of, I'm not going to let you face this by yourself. You're not going to be in this on your own. And white people talk to white people. They will listen to white people more than they will listen to Black people. And if you can connect with my pain, maybe we don't have the same hair texture. Maybe we don't have the type of music that you like to listen to. We have a lot of differences. But if you can connect with the reality of this pain, and then you can carry it into different spaces and think about us too when you're in those spaces, and how that would affect us and how that would sound to us, it would matter, because you guys have power. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how much we climb this ladder, there's still going to be this power inequity that exists within our communities until the people of power come and say, I'm going to give you some of my power. We talk about being Christians and believers. His strength is made perfect in our weakness. If I want to be like Christ, I need to identify the areas where there are weakness amongst my community, amongst my country, and I want to lend the power that I do have to try and help prop this community up. We need help, and we've been saying it for a long time, that we need to see a change, that we need to see officials who don't just think about the American dream, but think about those of us who are coming up from behind. And yes, we may not live in neighborhoods where the education system and the taxpayer system allows us to have access to the education that we need in order to catch up. So can someone please think about ways that our children can learn on the same level that your children can learn on, or we're going to continue to repeat this cycle. And I'm telling you, it's not just us whining and complaining for a couple of months. This is legitimate pain. This is legitimate fear. This is legitimate anger, because if you're fighting a house and you're a house fire and you're saying the house is on fire, the house is on fire, the house is on fire, and nobody listens and nobody comes, or someone opens the window and closes the window and goes back to sleeping nice and tight in their little bed while you're fighting a house, it does build up emotion down on the inside of you. And there's something about being that one person. You are one person, and you can make an incredible difference with whatever it is you have to offer. And we just need you to be willing to give that offering up, even if it doesn't feel like enough.
See, it's so powerful what you're saying on so many. I'm trying not to cry because it's real, and I think we hear so many sermons, and as you were talking, and I was thinking of the parable of the Good Samaritan, that we hear about so many other things, but it's like so many of us who profess to be Christ followers. We're more like the Levite and the priest than the Samaritan. Like you see the house on fire and you just cross and walk on by the other side, because it's like I'm so busy. But we're in a Kairos moment right now, and we can keep going back. The generation before us didn't do it. The generation before that didn't do it. So we could either keep blaming, or we could say, and especially us white people, okay, it's going to stop with us. We cannot. I don't want my daughters to think I did nothing. I mean, I don't want my daughters to just love your preaching on Sunday and to think that I wasn't there with you on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. It's like I want their Sunday and their Monday to be connected. It really matters. And so we can no longer cross by on the other side and say it doesn't affect us, because it does.
It
Period.
does.
I'm like, how much
Yeah.
more does Jesus need to get? How much louder does he need to scream for us to hear what is going on here? It's almost like, church, when are you going to get this? We're not actually moving on from this because there's nothing to move on from. This
Yeah.
is the gospel. This is Christianity. We are supposed to cross the street, be inconvenienced, use our own time, our own talent, our own treasure to help those that don't have it, and say, we are going to get you not only back on your feet, but soaring and thriving and flourishing, set up to do that. That is the Christian gospel. And so perhaps we need to stop highlighting the American dream and start highlighting the Christian dream, the God
Yeah.
dream, the Jesus dream. Because in the Jesus dream, everyone wins. In the
Yeah.
Jesus dream, there is enough. So I think some of the fear could be like, well, if I give up my bit and you get more, I'm like, how small is your God? How
Yeah.
small is your God that you would have a pie mentality rather than a river mentality that goes, hang on a minute. If I stop in this moment and go, I don't know what I've got. So in my case, I'm like, Sarah, Anita, please help me. This is what I've got. It's not mine anyway. The Lord is, if I truly believe the Lord has given me any influence, any platform, any voice, if I truly believe that is God and not me in my life, then of course I want to do whatever. It's God's to say, how can I help at this Kairos moment? How can I help my Black brothers and sisters? And how can I best do that? And I don't know how to best do that, which is why I'm coming to all of you. And that's why before I post anything, before I say anything, I'm like, Sarah, you are my social media director. Help
Yes.
me to say this. Help me to have this conversation. Help me to best utilize, what I have in the best, help me leverage it for good. But that's called the gospel. And I'm saying to anyone that's watching this, no matter where you are, what you do, where you live, everybody has a measure of influence. And in this moment in America, we have the choice to be the Levite and the priest and walk straight past with our Christian religion, or to cross the street, I think. Sorry, you're looking at me.
I
I'm
totally
just, yeah,
agree. No, no,
yeah,
no.
yeah,
I think what's most important too is that we have to realize that we're fighting for an America that we've never seen before.
yeah,
And I think that that's part of the resistance and honestly the fear that comes with any type of change, right? It's like we've never really seen the type of equality that we're fighting for right now, which means the greatest gift that you may be willing to give or may be able to give this moment is the ability to say, I am willing to lay down America as I have known it so that it can be an America that everyone has access to. And that means that even though you may not be directly responsible for some of the systems in place, recognizing that if I am a white American, then I have benefited in some way from these systems. This is not an accusation. I'm not trying to make anyone feel bad, but you just have to recognize because of how the system has been set up, you have probably benefited in a way that I have not benefited from. And so when you join this fight for equality, that means that there is going to be some type of shift. And that shift may mean that you are facing a different type of city, a different type of way of connecting, and to become comfortable in that may be your greatest challenge, but it is also what we must be willing to go through in order for us to experience any level of transformation, is letting go of life as I have known it. Who didn't like to go out and party and do whatever and gossip or whatever? Like, we enjoyed those moments when we were in those moments, but as we grew and evolved, we recognized that in order for me to become who I need to be in God, I'm going to have to lay down some of the things that have caused me trauma, that has caused other people trauma, that
yeah.
has kept me from becoming the best that I can be. And if I'm going to lay those things down and walk into the unknown, I don't know who I'm going to become. I don't even know if I'm going to like it all of the time. Like when I first started speaking, like I still get nervous. Like I was praying before this Instagram live. I'm Lord Jesus, give me the words. I mean, calling on the name of Jesus. Oh, Father, please, in the name of Jesus, hand clapping and everything, right? Because I still get nervous, but I recognize that in order for me to see God, we're talking about seeing seeing God. In order for me to see God, I can't see myself too. And there are moments where if I have to choose, I have to lay myself down and make myself uncomfortable so that I can see God. And I think that if you take an objective view and you take a step back and look at this country the way that it has been, you have to ask yourself, has everyone in this country been able to see God? And if not, why? And what do we have to do in order to change that? And that's what I want more than anything, is I want to be able to see God show up in my nation. And we can say, you know what, this isn't going to change until Jesus comes back, but that does not rob us of the excuse and the responsibility, rather, of getting out there and doing what we can with what we have right now. And so when we talk about fighting for that America that has never been seen before, like, you're going to get out there, you're going to say some things, and you may get corrected and you may be challenged, and you have to remember, but what is it that I am fighting for? And what I love about you is when you reached out to me, you had already done your homework. You didn't come to me asking me to explain to you the inequities in this country. You had done enough research and enough reading where you said, I understand what the problem is. I just need help understanding how I can respond. If you are listening and you are a white person and you are just now getting it, when you go to your Black friends, do not ask them to explain to you what went wrong, sis. You can find that information out by using Google, okay, bruh. You can find that information out by picking up that handy dandy phone you're watching this on and doing your research. When you come to me as a Black person, to come with me with empathy, to come to me with an understanding, to come with me, to come to me and say, here are my resources. What can I do to help fight this fight? Just point me in the right direction and I'll take my slingshot and you go that way and I go that way. You're not going to fight on your own. That is what we need in this moment. And I think that I have been able to really process more emotionally, because we're not the only ones fighting in this season. To see my white brothers and sisters out there posting and clapping back in comments and helping people to understand why we're not saying all lives matter in this moment gives me a minute to, I don't have to clap back. And because I don't have to clap back, I can now figure out how traumatic it is for me, for my 17-year-old son, when everyone was out rioting and looting, to say that they were out in the valley and there was some rioting and looting taking place, and they were right in that neighborhood, and we called them. We're like, come home right now, because we didn't want them to be in danger. And our 17-year-old son was with his sister, and they were getting in the car, and he tells his sister, maybe I should sit in the back, because if the police come by, maybe they'll be less likely to stop you if you're in the car by yourself, if they see me in the front seat. And like, that is the type of psychological pain and trauma that, like, we are tired of having to deal with. That at 17 years old, that he has to think about what will keep him from becoming a problem or being seen as a problem. He loves the Lord. He sings on the worship team. He's educated. And like, he realizes that none of those things can matter in a split moment. And that hurts. And it's not a pain that we feel like anyone else has to feel. And until you can really connect with that and say, I don't want her son to feel that. And I don't want anyone, whether they're in the inner city and have had a drug rap sheet or whatever, like, I don't want this to come down to a death sentence. Like, when white kids do drugs, like, they go to rehab and they get to go on and be in corporate America and they get to laugh about it at frat parties. We're put into the prison system with longer sentences. When we come out, we can't get jobs, we can't recover. Like, it's not fair. It's not fair. And so in order for us to have this to really be equal, we're just asking for you to see this for what it is, like, to really see it for what it is, and to say that I don't want it to be like this for anybody. I benefit from it, but just because I'm benefiting from poison doesn't mean that I want anyone else to experience this. It's poison.
Amen.
It's
Yeah.
poison. And we're the ones that feel like we're suffering from it. And that no one recognizes that in order for the poison of racism to continue to thrive in our systems, it means that we're the ones who end up sick, and we're the ones who end up in prison, and we're the ones who end up out crying and hollering in the streets because nobody cares that we have been injected with poisons and redlined into certain communities and kept from getting certain jobs because we have names that sound different or we have expressions that sound different. And we're tired of just being fed poison and being told, well, it's okay, you'll be all right, and when you get to heaven, it'll be okay. What can we do to affect change now?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, yes, Selah. we could end it right here, because that's exactly right. You know, when Jesus said that we're to love our neighbor as we love ourselves, which means everything that I want for my children, I want for your children. Everything I want for my family, I want for your family. I mean, this is so basic gospel, so basic. It's like, this is a gospel issue. What is at stake is not just America and the future of America. We're talking the gospel. This is what it is all about. That's where I feel, I want to say, I'm sorry. I do want to say I'm sorry, because it's like, you know, Dr. Anita talks about body language, you know, when one part suffers, the other part suffers. And when we haven't even got to A is suffering, is getting in the pit with our brothers and sisters and going, I feel your pain. Oh, my arm hurts. I feel your pain. You don't start going, wow, this arm's awesome. You jump onto the part that's hurting. The fact that we have even not been able to acknowledge that there is a part of the body that is hurting, and we've tried to minimize it. While it's been hemorrhaging and bleeding out, we're like minimizing, pretending that you shouldn't even be bleeding. What are you bleeding about? What's your problem? Like, I'm like, I can't even get that, let alone moving to be, which is wanting for your neighbor what you have for yourself, not so trying to protect yourself. That is just so ungodly. That is so antichrist. It's so antithetical to the gospel. And then before we even get to the world, no wonder the world is marching and the world is screaming, because we have the Holy Spirit, the church does. And then the world has the church. But if the church hasn't turned up because we haven't even allowed the Holy Spirit to change us, it is no wonder that everybody else is. And to me, I'm like, are you kidding me? If the church has the Spirit and the world has the church, what hope has there been thus far? Because the church has been silent. The church has not even been concerned about this. And so I'm really sorry. So as a believer, it doesn't matter if I'm from Australia. It doesn't matter if I'm Greek. I have white skin. I am sorry. I am sorry. And it's not like a token, you know, this is everyone saying sorry. I mean it from the core of my being. And if I can be used of God for anything but to awaken in my sphere of influence this basic empathy, love the Lord your God, here the vertical with all your heart, soul, and mind, and then the horizontal. And Jesus says, love your neighbor as you love yourself. And I think until we, the body of Christ, even in our friendships, if we for our own friends do not want for our neighbor what we have, there's something fundamentally wrong with our heart as Christians. That it wouldn't ache me that you as a mother worry. And this is how, all I'm saying is how I know my heart is beginning to change is my daughter about a month ago, and this is out of my relationship with you, this is where things start to change, has got, you know, she's got Hispanic friends, Jewish friends, Black friends in her school. Her friend group would be one of the rare ones that's got everyone in there. But I remember she said, Mum, me and her white friend were going to, they had a assignment, a homework assignment, and they're cheerleaders on the basketball team, and most of our basketball team is, you know, great Black young men. And she said their particular names. We're going to meet two of them to hand over just our assignment. We've been working on it on the phone, and we've agreed to meet at so-and-so parking lot so we can. And I remember I jumped up and I said, Catherine, don't you dare. I said, you tell them not to get out of the car and come to you. This is all because of you. I go, because if somebody in this very white community sees two Black young men, 17 years old, that you're friends with, that come to my house for dinner, if they see them approaching a car with two white, I go, I don't know what's going to happen. And the very fact that I thought I'm 53 years old, and that just came out of my mouth. That's how, but to me, I mean, it devastated me, but I thought, I think for the first time, I'm starting to understand what is your daily reality 24/7. For the first time, I said to my white daughter, please tell them not to do that. Please tell them to come here and do this, because I don't know if they're going to get to the car, if they get out of their car to walk to your car. And I really felt it. Like, I mean, I was crying, and Catherine goes, Mum, I said, no, it's real, Catherine, it's real.
It's real. My son is, we have two sons, they're both 17, and my other son is like like 6'3", 6'4". He's got a full beard. He's 17 though. He looks like a grown man. And we were at the grocery store and it was raining and there were no more carts in the like dry area. And so he was running to go get a cart. And this lady was putting her cart away and he's running towards her and grabs the cart. And she looked frightened and he didn't understand why. And so like when he came back, I'm like, babe, you're too tall and too black to be running towards a white woman to get a grocery cart. She didn't know what to expect. And that's just the reality that we have to tell him what his presence means in this country. And to have other people really recognize that, and of course it would be great if we could change everyone's mind with like one instant snap, but to at least the more minds that we can change with conversations like this, it's so important. And I want to challenge you, if you're watching, to not just like black people because you like my black children, but to see every black child or every black woman or every black son like my son and my child. And when you see them, because sometimes we have black friends, but we don't really like black people. Like I was the one friend in high school where I could come over to my white friend's house, but if she was dating a black boy, they were like, absolutely not. You cannot date a black boy. You can be friends with black people, but we don't want them to be dating. Like, because there's just like, I can accept this one, but I don't know about all of them. Like we are all, you have to see us all the same, because that person who you may be vilifying, who you see on the street, is probably my cousin or someone who looks like my cousin. Like, it's not like you get to take just one of us. I can love this black person. And I want to challenge your heart on that a little bit. Is like, sometimes we're comfortable with black people as long as it's a black person that I know, but to really maybe open up your mind to say, what if everyone is as unique and funny and educated and loving? When I see them as this one black person I love, how would I see them and how would I engage with them when I see them in different places?
You know, you said something about, you didn't use the phrase minimizing you, but to a degree what you meant was minimizing my blackness in certain place, and that could be over a dinner table as
Sure.
well as in a church setting, in the corporate workplace, whatever it might be. When you say that, what do you mean? What are practical things where you go, this is actually what we black women don't do in certain spaces with white women?
Well, I think there are just certain conversations that we can't engage in, like, or that we don't fully understand, and we can't really bring a counter to it without it fully being maybe looked at differently. I mean, I think even with us on the prayer call, us not bringing up, like, I was relieved that Dr. Anita brought up Ahmad's case, but I wasn't going to do it. And I think that that's a failure on my part, to be honest, just as much as it probably could have been a failure on your part to bring it up, is because like, you don't want to make white people uncomfortable. Or if they say something that is politically incorrect, like being that black girl or black person that's like, you don't really want to say that. And then now people are uncomfortable, or I was just joking, and you can't even correct them to have a more cultural worldview because of the people who are in the room, because you don't want to make them uncomfortable. And so that's what I mean by minimizing blackness. And I think there have been plenty of times where have felt guilty of like being in a space, someone says something and I didn't respond in a way that I think I should have, because I didn't want the white person to feel like I was being angry or that they had to be afraid. I can remember when there was an actor who we thought there was a hate crime against, and it ended up kind of being a little shaky. I don't know what happened fully, but I can remember going to Orange Theory that next morning, and this lady from the reception was like, oh my gosh, can you believe that was all fake? He just set you guys back 100 years. And I just like, I had so many thoughts racing through my mind, but I wanted to tell her, like, the only reason why he had anywhere to set us in the first place is because your ancestors set us back 400 years before that happened. But those are the types of liberties that are taken in conversations that you shouldn't just take with black people. Like, you can't tell a black person that something happened that set our community back as if we're striving for this goal or this finish line that is going to make us acceptable for your white community or for your white comfort. So, like, I would refrain from speaking on behalf of the black community. If you're a white person, since we're at it, I'm going to just tell you guys, if your black friend talks about her hair with you, that is beautiful, but that does not give you a license to go up to other black people asking them about their hair or touching their hair. That is another thing that can get very, very awkward, because it is an invasion of personal space. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in a grocery store and maybe had my hair braided and someone has come up to me and touched my hair like, oh my gosh, how long did this take? I know you guys don't mean any harm. I know it's coming from the best place. space and you're actually very curious, but it is still an invasion of space, and it kind of makes you feel like there's like your property that can be touched and invaded in any way because someone has a curiosity about you. If you admire my hair, you can say, I like your hair, and keep it pushing. You don't have to ask if it's real. You don't have to ask how long it took. You don't have to ask all those questions that make it seem like, oh, did it hurt? Unless you and your Black friend have that relationship. Don't just go out here talking to Black folks about Black stuff, because sis, you're going to run up on the wrong person on the wrong day and things could get real challenging. And I'm trying to help you out here. Let me be your Black friend for a minute. Okay. Don't run up on people like that.
That is awesome. Since we're on a roll, can you give me 5 things that white people do intentionally or unintentionally that you just go, because most of us wouldn't actually even, if someone's got a good heart, okay, sometimes they're just ignorant. We're going to put aside intentional.
Sure.
Okay, but let's talk about things that maybe we just don't know. Like culturally, this is not cool.
Like asking about fried chicken, like the Black foods that you think we like, not ideal. Saying things like you're pretty for a Black person, or you sound really educated, as if you're surprised that a Black person can sound educated. That is offensive. There are so many.
You realize I'm just freaking out right now that actually would be a thing. Someone would say you're educated, or someone would say you're pretty for a Black person.
Yeah, you're really pretty for a Black girl, or you sound really educated, almost like shocking. Like you sound really educated, because there is a perspective on what it means to be Black in America. So anything that stretches out of that becomes a shock for some communities. So we don't even have the opportunity to be unique because we're often seen as monolithic. And so anything that steps out of this idea of uneducated or poor or ghetto or ratchet makes people almost celebrate something that is probably within our bloodline and is not unique at all, because it is how we've all learned to survive within this culture. I definitely think the hair thing, I think anything that talks about our body parts, like, oh, Black girls have big butts, oh, Black girls have big lips, like our bodies are not to be objectified or glorified in any way as something that is unique to Black women. Those are things that can definitely be offensive. And I know, like, I went to school with white girls. I went to Texas Christian University, which I was mostly around. Oh, Lord, here's another one. Okay. So, like, when y'all see us in nice places, like, there's no need to, like, when my husband and I go on vacation, to ask, like, do you play sports? Are you an actor? As if that's the only way that we're able to be in nice places. We definitely want to avoid statements like that. We don't want to assume that if we're in first class somewhere, that it's because we won some type of lotto, or like, good for you, or I'm so glad, I'm so proud of you all for that. Those are things that are really annoying. And,
I'm going to make a list. I'm literally going to make a list of all of these things. I'm going to post it, but keep going. Yes.
I think to really capture your thought for a minute and say, like, why am I responding this way? Like, why am I responding that way, that I am surprised that they're here? Or I see a Black person in a nice hotel and I think, oh, good for them. Like, what is it in me that responded in that way? Or I think, wow, she's really articulate. Like, what is it that's in me? And you could boil it down to the root, and maybe the root isn't that you have a perspective on Black people. Maybe it could be you really do think that person is articulate compared to the people who you get to hear speak. But you just have to know that me on the receiving end, right? Because we're not talking about your intention, and we're not talking about whether or not you were racist in what you said, but you have to know part of my experience in this country means that I have had more experiences that confirm that this is happening, because I am not like the average Black person that white people have in mind. So when you say something to me, I may attribute it to you confining me into this certain stereotype of what you think it means to be Black. So I think it is going to require a certain level of wisdom when engaging with people of different races to really know, like, how could this be received? That trauma perspective that Dr. Anita brings up again is so really important. If I see this through the lens of someone who has experienced a trauma, if you take a sex trafficking victim who has been through a trauma, and then you say something maybe about that person's body, or you say something about that person's looks, you just have to know that I could be good intention in what I'm saying, but I may be pointing or hitting on something that ends up hurting her. And so you need to filter your conversations through that mindset as well. Obviously, there's a lot going on, and people are trying to find ways to really make themselves more open to healthy conversations. I think white people especially, I think if you're in a corporate or work environment, like you may be really moved. I don't know if you necessarily want to put that Black person on the spot in a corporate environment to say, heard what's going on. I just want you to know I'm with you. Because in order for us to kind of show up in a space where we can kind of stay focused and not fall apart, we may not be able to receive that. So be sensitive that your new compassion may need to be balanced with where a person is in a particular moment. It may be an email, it may just be a lunch gift card or a note left on the desk that allows that person space to really continue to function without having to comfort or talk about and communicate about what's happening in the country.
I think that is so helpful, just even that last, because compassion is about the other person. It's not about trying to do something with my guilt or my emotion, but it's actually to serve and help others. I think I'm listening to you talk, and, you know, not having been raised in America, not being American, I think I understand why perspectives would be this way, because we've grown up traveling the world, like, so, you know, my 3 decades of ministry. So for me, either to see a Black person in first class or a corporate executive, that is just normal, like, because of going to London and going to Africa and South Africa and so many parts of the world where it just is, and interacting, especially with our work with A21, with government officials, corporate officials. I mean, I see every race, color, creed. But I realize, and I think a lot of the reading that I've done, watching so many of the movies, which are on Netflix all for free. I mean, I've been posting both on Propel and our sites, like, watch these movies that are on Netflix for free, whether it's 13th, whether it's, you know, 12 Years a Slave, whatever it might. I mean, that you just go, if you grow up here, you don't realize that if this is your whole worldview, and a people group, they came to this soil as slaves, so inadvertently that's how you've seen them. As, I mean, I run an anti-slavery organization, so you know, I have a whole curriculum around the world called Bodies Are Not Commodities, to teach people that bodies are not commodities. But the fact is, if that's woven into the fabric of a society, and you haven't traveled outside, and you haven't done a whole lot of, your worldview is very insular, you just have this without even realizing it. Your grandmother sort of thought that way, your great grandmother or grandfather, or parents. And so you can have these just assumptions. And I think, as you were talking about either speech or language or education, I thought, why haven't I thought that? Just as I was trying to analyze it there, and I thought, I think the difference is worldview and an exposure to a larger world. But the reality of what you're saying is there. And I want to make that checklist, because I think a lot of people, and even if we have to start with the discomfort of going, okay, this is really hard, but at least I know 7 things not to do. And it's almost like going to the gym until I get my reps up, and then I'll internalize it. And sometimes it takes, and I'm trying to do that even with this, and why I text you so often. Please help me rewrite this. Please help me say this, because until I get in a rhythm, I know what my heart is, but at the moment there is a bit of a disparity between my comfort level, and it's like, I'm 53 and I'm getting in. This is a new vein for me, and it's new language, it's new terminology. I've had to go and do a whole new history. And I mean, I'm at grad school, and I've done what I think is almost an equivalent master's level course of training on reading dozens of books and watching things to go, I need to know. I can't remain ignorant. So it's challenging, like, you know, for someone like me that embraces it, that runs an anti-slavery organization, that goes, okay, am I going to be both humble and honest and transparent enough to go, I run an anti-slavery organization globally. I've gotten the Mother Teresa Award. I've gotten state, and yet can I admit that I don't know enough about racism in America? And just because some laws may have changed, which means technically you can't own slaves here, does it really mean that the ramifications of having owned slaves and 400 years of history, does that mean that there's not stuff in society that is residue from all of that? And Christine, you live here, so you have a responsibility. So as simple as that, whatever it means. And so, and I'm saying this to the white people watching this, going, listen, if I'm willing to do it, and at my age can continue to learn and grow, anyone can, like anybody can. And I want to encourage everyone because it's a gospel issue. I keep saying that, and most of us don't know what we don't know. And the Bible says, "Get wisdom, get knowledge, and get understanding." So to me, this is all part of that. And if that means a 53-year-old white woman has to get knowledge and understanding from a 31, 32, I don't know how old you are. How old are you?
31.
From yeah, I won't add an age to you. From a 31-year-old black woman, then so be it. That's what has to happen, because we're one body and we're many parts, and we're in this together. And I want to learn, and I want to grow, and I want to change, and I want to help others be willing to do that, because the fact is, first and foremost, it's right and it's God honoring. Second, there is not a chance that we're going to see any kind of revival that we profess that we want to see until we are willing to humble ourselves first and foremost. Repent of the injustice that has been there. Repent of our own blindness. Repent of our own complicity in either intentionally or unintentionally. Some people wouldn't even like me talking like this, but it is what it is. Yeah. Because we have all been complicit in some way, shape, or form, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And then having the courage and moral fortitude to say, Father, yes, we're going to keep having conversations and we're going to keep learning, but you all know, there is a point where I'm just going to draw a line in the sand and go, your faith without works is dead. There needs to be some action here. There needs to be an action that's going to be uncomfortable, action that's going to be costly. Again, that is gospel. Whether I lay down my life, whether I serve my brothers and sisters, if my life's not my own, if my things are not my own, you never know what idols you have in your own life until Jesus starts saying, how about we lay some of this stuff down?
Yes.
Then the idolatry is really revealed. And this is a Kairos moment where I truly believe the invitation is, if we're willing to do it, what's on the other side will blow our minds. But there will be, unless we keep talking about you said to me, elephants and gnats, unless we're willing to literally go lay down, what are the 10 dumb things we do, and say, what are the things, unless we're actually willing to not only talk about the elephant in the room, but begin to dismantle that elephant in the room, and move beyond it, we're just going to be perpetuating what has already existed in this country for hundreds of years. And we're going to have religion on Sunday and play games the rest of the week. And I'm too old to play games. Yeah. I'm going to be standing before Jesus sooner than you are, in all likelihood. And I don't want to miss my moment. I don't want to stand and go, whoa, we built a great ministry, but didn't do this thing didn't cross the street in this opportunity, this Kairos moment that could truly change the world. Because if by this will all men know that we are his disciples, by the love one for another, this relational component has to be authentic love. You can't have to minimize yourself every time and second guess yourself. And we all read rooms when we go. It doesn't matter if you're black or white or whatever. I mean, of course, we all enter into different spaces and rooms and professionally. And yes, there are adjustments that have to be made. I love that light. You're glowing right now.
I know.
You got the Holy
Spirit.
Glow. But there has to come a part where we go, the things that are unjust, ungodly, unrighteous, we can't pretend they don't exist anymore, and we can't play our part in it. And so you have my commitment, and that whatever I can do and keep doing. What I want to do is tell us, because there's a lot of people watching this that go, well, I don't have IG, I don't have this like Christine does. What can they do in their world to create safe spaces for Black people to teach, to talk, to have conversations, without you having to feel like, man, I've got to not be emotive and I've got to be sensitive to white people's feelings? I mean, what can people do practically?
Well, I think, I've seen a lot of people posting and they feel like I want to do more than a post, but there is something about you posting that lets us know, like, you see this. And I think that that is worthy of doing, even if you don't have the words to say, I'm on a journey, I'm seeing things differently. Because not only are you letting us know as Black people that you recognize what's happening, but you're also taking your followers on a journey. Like I say, white people listen to white people, by and large, you know what I mean? Part of the reasons why we see our church community so segregated is because we're able to receive communication better from people who understand our culture and background. And so you may have really gotten it recently. Maybe you're like Chris and you understand this a little bit more in a way that you didn't understand it before, maybe in a way that you've never been taught. To be able to strike up those conversations on your platform and to allow people to be on that journey with you is really important. Like I said, if it's just a post-it note or a DM commenting back on some of your peers' posts, hey, I'm with you. I'm sorry, my heart is breaking for you, to let us know that you're in this fight as well. And I think that if you have relationship with a person of color and you say, hey, listen, what can I do to help? I want to do something meaningful in our community, not out of a place of guilt, but out of a place of really wanting to see change. What do you think are some things that I can be doing? Do you know of any organizations maybe that I could be giving to or volunteering at that would allow people to just know that I am in support of this? For the most part, we generally know areas where we could have our white friends become of support, getting plugged into Black churches. You need to follow some Black people. You need to become comfortable with how Black people speak, how they express themselves, what's funny to them, so that when you see them as people and not just, especially if you live in areas and places where you don't know a lot of Black people. Maybe you don't have any Black friends at all. Well, I will be your Black friend on Instagram. Okay, come over on my page and you can see me do my daughter's hair. You can see me preach my messages, and it may be different from anything you've ever seen before, and that's okay. You got to become comfortable seeing different expressions of love, of happiness, of joy, and humor, so that you don't think that your way is the only way. So I would say open your heart and to extend an olive branch when you can, and to share what you're learning with the people who you do have influence with.
I love that. Okay. What's your dream sort of for your Black and white friends, and what if you could sort of sum it up?
I would say that my dream is for us to really, really be able to see one another and to see the value in each other, and to recognize that together we really are better. I think that would be like my greatest dream. I want to change the world. I'm not one of those people who are ready to like give up and say it's all going to hell until Jesus comes back. I know you're out there. I know you're watching, and there are some of you who are that way. I'm not ready to join that boat yet. And if I gain about 40 more pounds from quarantine, I might be able to say it's all going to hell and it's sagging and loose and all of that. So, but until then, I'm still going to fight the good fight. And I would love to see us all rise up together and to see one another unique in our expressions and how we show up, but to see value in one another. That's my greatest dream, is to look out in rooms and to not just see speckles of Black people or speckles of white people, but to say, wow, we really know how to come into one another's space and enjoy it.
Absolutely. I'm with you. I'm 100% with you. So you're got to go and make sure you follow Sarah. She'll make you laugh and she'll freak you out. If she pushes the envelope. She's awesome. I love her. I'm like, it's fantastic. So,
it's fine. It's totally fine.
I just want to thank you. We'll wrap up. I mean, we could talk forever because I just love you so dearly. But thank you. Thank you for helping us. And listen, I'm a hope-filled person. I just can't help it. I have hope that things are beginning to change. I understand why so much of the Black community might sort of almost roll their eyes and go, look, we've been here before. We've seen this before. But I just want to let you know that there's a lot of people in my personal world that I'm talking to that are in it for the long haul, and they're seasoned people. We're not like enamored. I've been in social justice work for a really long time in really difficult nations. So I'm not just enamored with, wow, we're all caught up in this moment and everyone's marching and 2 weeks from now, everyone's going to forget. I'm in it for the long haul because I truly believe we can model something, and I want revival. And I think until we have this, we're not going to see that. But I think we're on our way. So thank you. Thank you for loving us enough to jump on here.
Thank you. I love you. And I love walking through this with you. I enjoy being the bridge and living at that intersection and trying to explain and translate as much as I can. So thank you for this opportunity.
We love you. And we'll talk again.
Okay.
Bye. See you, my friend. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.